Welcome back, dear readers. I am so excited to get to read Chapter 6 of Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes, now with our schema built up about origami. First, let's go over some of our questions from yesterday. Yesterday, I asked you, how do Sadako's feelings about her sickness change throughout these two chapters, throughout chapters 4 and 5? You told me that Sadako's feelings changed by the Thousand Paper Cranes because her friend told the story about the cranes. Can you remind me, what was Sadako's best friend's name? Right, Shizuko. Sadako was at first scared about her sickness, but then her friend visited her and she felt hopeful because her friend told her the story about if you fold 1,000 paper cranes, she will feel so much better. And in chapter 5 it said, Shizuko asked, "It's supposed to live for 1,000 years. If a sick person folds 1,000 paper cranes, the gods will grant her wish and make her healthy again." What an awesome friend, scholars. By the way, why did Shizuko, besides the story, choose to fold 1,000 paper cranes? We know now from our schema that we read in our nonfiction text that you can make all sorts of animals. But why paper cranes? Tell me. Yes, we also now know in our schema that the crane is the international symbol for peace and is associated with health. And the gods will grant her wish to make her healthy again because the crane stands for health. Remember, scholars, Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes is what genre of text? Tell me. Yes, it is historical fiction. Don't get tricked. Just now we read a nonfiction article to help build our schema to understand this historical fiction text. It's coming from the author's imagination and is make-believe. Can you remind me, what genre of text are we reading? What genre of text is Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes? Yes, this is a make-believe text. It is historical fiction. Can you remind me, friends, is real facts even a genre? Say no way. Good. Remember this answer, historical fiction, when we move on to our questions independently. Let's keep reading. Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes. I'm going to skip to chapter 6. Chapter 6. Kenji. Everyone saved paper for Sadako's good luck cranes. Shizuko brought colored paper from the bamboo class. Father saved every scrap from the barber shop. Even Nurse Yasunaka gave Sadako the wrappings from packages of medicine. And Masahiro hung every one of the birds as he had promised. Such an awesome brother. Sometimes he strung many on one thread. The biggest cranes flew alone. During the next months, there were times when Sadako felt almost well. However, Dr. Numata said it was best for her to stay in the hospital. By now, Sadako realized that she had leukemia, but she also knew that some patients recovered from the disease. We know that too from our schema reading leukemia. She never stopped hoping that she would get well too. On good days, Sadako was busy. She did her homework, wrote letters to friends and pen pals, and amused her visitors with games, riddles, and songs. In the evening, she always made paper cranes. Her flock grew to over 300. Now, the birds were perfectly folded. Her fingers were sure and worked quickly without any mistakes. Friends, what do you think Sadago's perspective is about her sickness as she's making these cranes? Tell me. Totally, scholars. I agree. Amazingly, Sadako still feels hopeful. As we know, with leukemia, some people can recover. And with all the help that she's getting with her paper cranes, she's continuing to feel hopeful. Let's go ahead and add that to our Google form. As she's making the paper cranes, Sadako feels hopeful. If you need to, pause your video to type that in now. Good. Let's keep reading. Gradually, the atom bomb disease took away Sadako's energy. She learned about pain. Sometimes throbbing headaches stopped her from reading and writing. At other times, her bones seemed to be on fire. And more dizzy spells sent Sadako into deep blackness. Often, she was too weak to do anything but sit by the window and look longingly out at the maple tree in the courtyard. She would stay there for hours, holding the golden crane in her lap. Friends, why does Sadako just sit at her window for hours? Tell me. Right, friends. It seems like the disease for Sadako is getting worse. We know from our schema after reading leukemia the other day that some of the symptoms of leukemia include bone pain or tenderness, and of course, constant tiredness and weakness and dizziness. Friends, I know that from my schema, Sadako was a very lively child who loved running. So it must be so hard for her to barely be able to move now and be in that much pain. I can't imagine what that must be like for a little girl. So I'm going to take a couple minutes to reflect on that in my historical fiction journal. Sadako must be thinking and feeling. Remember, whenever you need to, feel free to pause our video and reflect in our journal or just a scrap piece of paper. Sadako was feeling especially tired one day when Nurse Yusanaga wheeled her out onto the porch for some sunshine. There, Sadako saw Kenji for the first time. He was 9 and small for his age. Sadako stared at his thin face and shining dark eyes. "Hello," she said. "I'm Sadako." Kenji answered in a low, soft voice. Soon the two were talking like old friends. Kenji had been in the hospital for a long time, but he had few visitors. His parents were dead, and he had been living with an aunt in a nearby town. "She's so old that she comes to see me only once a week," Kenji said. "I read most of the time." Friends, why do you think that Sadako and this little boy, Kenji, became friends so fast? Tell me. Right, scholars. It sounds like Kenji also might have leukemia. And he and Sadako have a lot in common. They both are battling this disease, and they both have been in the hospital for quite some time. I know from my schema that when you and another person are going through the same thing, it can be really easy to find things in common and become friends. Let's keep reading. Sadako turned away at the sad look on Kenji's face. It doesn't really matter, he said with a weary sigh, because I'll die soon. I have leukemia from the bomb. But you can't have leukemia, Sadako said quickly. You weren't even born then. That isn't important, Kenji said. The poison was in my mother's body, and I got it from her. ELA Masters, how did Kenji get leukemia, even if he wasn't born when the bomb was dropped? Tell me. Right, friends. We know again from our schema when we read leukemia earlier this week that there are certain risk factors that scientists believe could increase a person's risk, like exposure to chemicals and a family history of leukemia. If his mom was so exposed to those certain chemicals, then she must have passed it down to him. We know now that leukemia can be contracted by environmental factors, the air around you, like it was for Sadako with the radiation in the air, or it could be something that you were born with. In Kenji's case, unfortunately, his mother had it, so it was passed on to him. Let's add that to our planner, friends. How did Kenji get leukemia even though he wasn't alive when the atom bomb was dropped? He was sadly born with it and got it from his mother. If you need to, pause your video to type that in now. Make sure it's those 5 words. Born with it from mother. Scholars, as I'm reading, it makes me honestly quite sad that Kenji would just talk about dying in that way. I know that as a little kid, that must be so hard to process. I'm going to take a couple minutes to reflect on that in my journal. Let's keep reading, friends. Sadako wanted so much to comfort him, but she didn't know what to say. Then she remembered the cranes. You can make paper cranes like I do, she said, so that a miracle can happen. I know about the cranes, Kenji replied quietly, but it's too late. Even the gods can't help me now. Just then, Nurse Yusunaga came out onto the porch. Kenji, she said sternly, how do you know such things? He gave her a sharp look. I just know, he said. And besides, I can read my blood count on the chart. Every day, it gets worse. The nurse was flustered. What a talker, she said. You are tiring yourself. And she wheeled Kenji inside. Wow. Friends, Kenji is only 9 years old, but what is his perspective about having leukemia? Tell me. Right. Kenji just thinks he will die. If you need to, pause your video to type that in now. Let's keep reading, friends. Back in her room, Sadako was thoughtful. She tried to imagine what it would be like to be ill and have no family. Kenji was brave, that's all. She made a big crane out of her prettiest paper and sent it across the hall to his room. Perhaps it would bring him luck. Then she folded more birds for her flock. 398, 399. Friends, does Sadako feel or think the same way as Kenji? Tell me. Right. Sadako is much more hopeful. She really believes in her birds and the power of the paper cranes, and she feels like they will send her a miracle. Let's keep reading. One day, Kenji didn't appear on the porch. Late that night, Sadako heard the rumble of a bed being rolled down the hall. Nurse Yusunaga came in to tell her that Kenji had died. Sadako turned to the wall and let the tears come. After a while, she felt the nurse's gentle hand on her shoulder. "Let's sit by the window and talk," Nurse Yusunaga said in a kindly voice. When Sadako finally stopped sobbing, she looked out at the moonlit sky. "Do you think Kenji is up there on a star island?" "Wherever he is, I'm sure that he is happy now," the nurse said. "He has shed that tired, sick body, and his spirit is free." Sadako was quiet, listening to the leaves on the maple tree rustle in the wind. Then she said, "I'm going to die next, aren't I?" "Of course not," Nurse Yusunaga answered with a firm shake of her head. She spread some colored paper on Sadako's bed. "Come and let me see you fold another paper crane before you go to sleep. After you finish 1,000 birds, you'll live to be an old, old lady." Friends, what is Sadako's perspective about her disease now after she found out about what happened to Kenji? Tell me. Right. It sounds like she was devastated and very sad that her friend has passed away or died, and now is maybe feeling a little bit worried. She said, "I'm going to die next, aren't I?" Maybe it's becoming harder and harder to believe in the power of the paper cranes. Let's write that in our Google form. What is Sadako's perspective of having leukemia after she hears about Kenji? Well, friends, she feels worried now. She was hopeful, but after Kenji, she's maybe not sure if she'll live or if she'll survive. I don't know about you, friends, but I'm going to take this time to reflect more in my historical fiction journal. Remember that you can always draw pictures as well. Miss Yabut's not really good at drawing paper cranes, but I can draw pictures of birds. Let's keep reading. After you finish 1,000 birds, you'll live to be an old, old lady. Sadako tried hard to believe that. She carefully folded cranes and made the same wish. 463, 464. Scholars, it seems like even after this terrible, terrible news about her friend Kenji, Sadako is still holding on to that belief and hope and folding those paper cranes and is now at 464. That must have taken a lot of hard work. What does this tell you about what Sadako is like? Tell me. Right. Scholars, I saw some of you say determined. Even though she knows it will be hard, she is continuing to work hard on her paper cranes so that she can get her wish. If you need to, pause your video to type that in now. And when you're finished, go ahead and click next to continue.